What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Video and back with another Chimeratech format video. I've been loving this format so far. It's the format based around SJC Orlando in January of 2007, using the September 2006 ban list with the emergency ban of Stein that was instituted in December of 2006. I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's, a lot of interesting decks that can rise up and be experimented with and do well in the format. But of course, while there are some interesting new decks, of course, there are the old classics that are still running around. And, when we're talking about the early GX era, Monarchs is about as classic as it gets. So I'm going to be playing Monarchs today. This build is sort of something that I sort of tinkered around with. I started with the base of the Mark Vasquez list that did well at the actual original SJC Orlando event, but I changed some things that I wasn't really the biggest fan of and added in some things that I wanted to test out. Things like Hydra-Geddon I thought were kind of interesting engines to experiment with, see how they did in this format. DMOC as well. It's definitely a choice that not every deck goes with, but I like it in this deck. I think it's kind of neat. And if you're bringing out things like Spies or, Sidras or even Hydra-Geddons, you can pretty easily get 2 tributes on field for it. We're also playing double Brain Con here. We're not playing Soul Exchange in the deck because I felt like, in a format like this, it's good to be able to get aggressive often, but Soul Exchange could potentially come back into the deck later. I think it's a version of the deck you can play. Without Stein in the format, you don't need to get super aggro, so, you could potentially just use Soul Exchange to set yourself up in good positions. My Monarchs here could also be shifted around a bit. I played triple Mobius, triple Zaborg, and a Thestalos because I wanted a high Monarch count, and I valued back row removal and monster removal more than hand destruction. But, if you wanted to play more Thestalos, you could definitely do that as well, because Thestalos is very strong against a lot of the decks in this format. And also, you could potentially side Thestalos as well. I didn't side Thestalos. I sided things like Vanity's Fiend instead, which I think do better against specific targeted decks. But, the side deck here is also very open to interpretation. Like, there's a lot that I could change with this deck, and after getting games with it, I already have some ideas for things to change in the future. But before we get into those games, let's go through the deck breakdown. But of course, before we get to the deck breakdown, do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, really helps the channel grow, and we're trying to reach 1,600 by the end of the month, and I think that we can do that if you subscribe, if you're not already. So let's go through the deck breakdown right now and explain sort of my choices and why cards are in here. We got a Breaker because it's a great beater that deals with back row. We got triple Sidra because this prepares for your Monarchs. This is one of the most powerful ways to do that. And if you don't have a Monarch in hand, still a very good monster that you can just spell summon out and attack over your opponent's stuff. We got a DD Warrior Lady to banish our opponent's stuff. We got a DMOC, as I mentioned. It does require 2 tributes, which is a bit awkward, but it banishes your opponent's stuff, so good against Treeborn Frogs, also good against Sangans, things like that. Also, getting back a spell can be very strong, especially when you have some very powerful spells in this format. We've got 1 exiled here. Maybe this could get cut because it does compete for a normal summon, and this deck is very normal summon reliant, so you don't necessarily want to use this as your normal summon to pop your opponent's monster. I mainly have it in here because it's a good utility option, and it was in the original list, and I felt like it could still be worthwhile playing here. But I think in this deck specifically, it can be a bit tricky to play, so maybe this would get cut in the future for something else. We got triple Gravekeeper Spy, one of the most powerful cards in Monarchs. Even if your opponent brings out a Cyber Dragon attacks over 1 Spy, you've got another one to wall up with, and your opponent likely won't be able to hit over that. So this is a great way to get a treat fodder on field. We've got a Hydra-Geddon here to beat over your opponent's stuff, bring another Hydra-Geddon from deck. Now, I will say, I think this deck is, very good against a lot of the other decks in the format, and this card in particular is not as good against the mirror match here, which is one of this deck's hardest matchups, in my opinion. So maybe this thing isn't worth being in the main deck, but it does deal with a lot of other decks in the format, For instance, Gadgets gets over Gadgets very easily. Machine OTK, even if your opponent sets like a Cyber Phoenix, you can't get over that. But oftentimes your opponent doesn't set the Cyber Phoenixes because, they want to get the draw. And if you have a set monster and your opponent attacks over that set monster and that monster's Cyber Phoenix, it won't actually get the draw in this format. It needs to be face up when it's attacked into to actually get the draw. So Hydra-Geddon, I think it's still good against Machine OTK, beats over pretty much everything else in the deck before they go for the Chimeratech OTK stuff. So I think it's fine there. I really do think the only match where it really struggles is against the Monarch Mirror. Maybe against Dark World as well. It could be, yeah, I mean, the thing about Dark World is, outside the Dark World monsters, I feel like this thing beats over pretty much everything else in the deck. But, yeah, it could definitely be a bit trickier against decks that just aim to stick big guys on field. So maybe this will get cut in the future, but I do like the engine here right now. We got a Moth here as well to get back spells from grave. We got triple Mobius, triple Zaborg, and a Thestalos, as I mentioned before. We got a Sangan to search our deck. We can search out, like, a Treeborn Frog, which is very good. We can also just search out Spies, or, Warrior Lady, or Exiled, or etc. We got a Reaper here to wall up a bit, rip a card out of hand, potentially. Very good. And we got the Treeborn Frog, which is just one of the most powerful cards in this deck. For these spells, we got a Book of Moon, very, very flexible spell card. We got double Brain Con to take control of our opponent's stuff. We've got a Confiscation here to rip a card out of their hand. We got an Econ to take control of their stuff as well. This can also pair greatly with Treeborn Frog and be a reactive tool. We've got a Graceful Charity to dig deeper in our deck. We've got a Heavy Storm to clear away our opponent's back row. We got an MST to deal with their back row. We got a Premat to bring back our monsters. We got a Smashing to deal with their big monsters. We got a Call to bring back our monsters as well. We got a Mirror Force to deal with their aggressive pressure. We got Ring for spot removal and also potential burn damage to close out the game. We got double Saku for more battle protection, and we got a TT to blow up our opponent's board. For the side deck, we got a bit of a hodgepodge. We got triple Death Wombat and triple Decree for things like Chain Burn. I don't think Chain Burn's the best deck in this format, but it is something that people do play, and you want to be playing these to just sort of get rid of it in games 2 and 3. Which is where you're generally winning the Chain Burn match. We got double vanities here for things like Machine OTK. This can be very, very strong against that deck. We got a Knock to deal with our opponent's set monsters. We've got triple Threatening Roar for more OTK style decks. And we got triple Dust Shoot here to rip cards out of our opponent's hand, send them back in deck. This is a really, really good card in the mirror match, so very, very good to have there. This might be main deckable in this format because, you know, this is just a very, very powerful card, and it's good against Monarchs, it's good against Gadgets, it's good against a lot of decks in the format. But there are some decks where it does struggle against, and if you don't know you're going first, it can be a bit tricky to have, and can be a brick at times, and you really don't want to brick on this card with like a Treeborn Frog in rotation. But I think in general, this card is really good, and it definitely could be main deckable, maybe over things like Sakurazu Armor or the Smashing Ground or Exiled or something like that. So definitely room for this in the deck. For the Fusion deck, we've never going into any of this, so it doesn't really matter here, but it's good to have one to just bluff that you might have one. I will say one last thing about this deck. Jinzo's also a reasonable option to put in as an additional Monarch. But, you know, that's something that I don't have in this deck. I wanted to lean more into the Monarchs themselves and the DMOC, I guess. But, you know, Jinzo is definitely a very, very good tool in this deck because we're not playing too many traps. So, you know, Jinzo can shut down our opponent's traps. And while we have Jinzo on field, you know, we're kind of at the advantage compared to our opponent. That's also an option you can do with this deck in the future. But there are so many options you can do with this deck in the future. You can do Apprentice Monarch, you can do a lot of other stuff. So, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time in the weeds of like what else you could change here. But I do hope that you know, play this deck and try tinkering around with it yourself if you do want to play it. But in the meantime, I got some games with it. So let's show how this deck actually performed. Here we got some games here against Scout Zero, a new guest on the channel. Pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the games here. And we will be going second here, unfortunately. This is a pretty good hand overall. I'm not too upset about going second with this hand because, oh, well, I guess I am pretty upset about that. They get coffee here. So they're able to rip a card out of our hand. They're going to rip the Brain Con. That tells us that they might be wanting to get aggressive on their turn or just summing out a monster here to play around like Knock if we've got that in the main. So, you know, the Saku and the Mirror Force will be able to deal with that, but they will know about that, so it can be a bit awkward for us. They're going to bring out a green gadget, and that explains why they took the Brain Con, because, you know, we could just Brain Con the gadget, summon out Mobius, and get work in there. But this tells us that they're on gadgets, which can be a bit of a tricky deck to play, but I think Monarchs generally has the advantage against gadgets here. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Breaker here. We're going to summon out that Breaker, and we are just going to pop the back row preemptively. Gadgets is a deck that plays a lot of removal, and so we want to just pop this right away while we can. And it wasn't indeed a Sakura's armor, so I'm glad I did that. We're going to attack into the gadget there. They take 200. And then main 2, we set a Saku pass back to them. I figure if they're getting 2 monsters on field this turn, it's going to be Sidra and a gadget. And we've got the Sakura's armor for the Sidra. If they go like Sidra and a Cyber Phoenix, that's awkward for us. But then we've got Mirror Force on the following turn to at least do something there. But they have to have like exactly Cyber Dragon plus Cyber Phoenix to actually get around that. And they might not be willing to commit to that sort of board when they know we have a Mirror Force in rotation as well. So I feel fine just going for this. They're going to go for the red gadget there. Search out a yellow gadget. This is, you know, just typical gadget things. They're going to set 2, pass back to us, playing right into Mobius. But sometimes you just got to play into Mobius. So we're just going to summon out the Mobius. We know that they knew about the Mobius, so you know, they probably have something there, and they do indeed have the book. I think this was probably just to sort of bait us into summoning out the Thestalos instead of the Mobius, figuring that, like, they might have something to stop the Mobius, or it's all chainables. But I'm just going to take that bait, you know. At the end of the day, like, they did a book here to set down the Mobius, which is bad for us. But we get Confiscation as well to rip a card out of their hand. So, like, if they did have something to super punish the Mobius summon, then we get Comfy to just make their follow-up on the following turn a bit worse. So we're going to go for Comfy now, get a peek at their hand, and see that they've got a red gadget, a yellow gadget, and a Saku here. Now, these 2 gadgets, basically interchangeable. They both search out another gadget from deck and replace itself, so I don't really feel the need to send either of those. What I will send is that Sakura's armor, because that is removal, and we don't have another Mobius in hand. So I send the Saku because that does something unique in that hand. And then we send a Mirror Force pass back to them because now they are summoning out an additional monster here to attack into our set. So we want to have the Mirror Force to take that down. They won't do that actually, but we will be able to use the Sacrifice of Armor here. They're going to set one pass back to us, and we feel very good about this. We're going to tribute that Mobius for Thestalos, ripping a card out of their hand, and we're going to hit this one. And that's a Cyber Dragon, so this actually tells us that their set is a gadget. So I feel very good about that. We attack over the gadget. It's a red gadget, so now we know that their hand is only a yellow gadget, and that's a bit rough for them. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Magician of Faith. We're just going to set that first thing. If they've got like a Night Assailant set, like they've got a Night Assailant set, they're, if they hit the set, that's bad for us, but we've still got the Monarch here to deal with their stuff. And it's better to set this in case they've got like Morphing Jar or something there. But it's just the yellow gadget. They're going to set another pass back to us. We draw a Mobius here. That's pretty good. We are going to flip up this Magician of Faith here and grab that Confiscation. Just get that to hand. And now we're going to set that Confi, attack over their set monster there, and then attack directly for 300. The chip damage could potentially come up. Main two, we're going to go for the Confi, rip that last card out of their hand, hit a green gadget, and now they're down to top deck mode. If they've got a way to deal with the set Mirror Force, then they don't have a monster because Breaker is in... Oh, Breaker isn't actually in Graveyard. So yeah, I guess Breaker would punish this. But if they do a Breaker, they pop our back row, attack over Faith, and then we just attack over the Breaker next turn. So like, no matter what they do here, we're in a much better spot than them. So I feel perfectly fine doing that. They go for Yellow Gadget just to get that Green Gadget going, getting that advantage in, and now they can attack into our Magician of Faith. We'll just take that because, again, they're not really in a good spot here. So I feel like we're in a very good spot. We don't really need to use the Mirror Force now. We can save that for when they potentially have something to give us trouble. But they are going to, just take that 1200. They're going to summon out a green here. They're going to add a red to hand. And then they're going to set one pass back to us. So now they potentially have something that can give us a bit of pause, but we've got this Mobius in hand, so we can pop that set. It is a Ring of Destruction, so they're able to pop our Mobius, and they drop down to 2400 as well, which is pretty nice for us, given we have this ring in hand. Now, I set the ring because I figure if they've got heavy, we don't lose with heavy. But if they do have heavy, then our ring is useless at that point, because we'll be down to 100 life points because they've got a... Oh, wait, they've got a red in hand, right? Yeah, they've got a red in hand. So actually, yeah, we will lose if they've got heavy. So if they've got heavy, we lose. So there's not really much point to not setting the ring. So they're just going to attack in for 14 there. We're going to think about this. We are just going to Mirror Force that because I want to save the ring for potentially on a Monarch or something. If we can end the game that way. They're going to go for a red here. No effect because that's all their Monarchs. Or not Monarchs, but all their gadgets. All their gadgets have been used up. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Mystical Space Typhoon, and we're just going to set the Reaper, set the MST, pass back to them. They're going to go into battle phase, attack into our Reaper, so that just stays around, and they're going to set one pass back to us. We could potentially like MST that new back row in the end phase here, but we don't really have a way to like get super aggressive here, so I don't really feel the need to do that. We draw Gravekeeper Spy, which is very good for us, and they're going to think in standby phase, and they're going to shrink our Reaper just to take that away, so that way they deprive us of a tribute material if we have a Monarch in hand. We're going to set this Gravekeeper Spy here, and next turn we should be in a really good spot. They're going to attack in with the red gadget, hit into the Spy, they take 700, we bring out another Spy from deck, and now they're just going to set a monster, pass back to us. I think in end phase, I should have got MST on their back row here because we actually do just basically win the game at this point. Because, we've got Dark Magician of Chaos. We can tribute that out and add like a Braincon here and then attack into their set with the Dark Magician of Chaos. And I'm pretty sure like there's not really anything that can, get us out of the game at that point. So I feel like we could have just MST'd the back row in the end phase here. We choose not to do that. A slight mistake on my part, but I don't think it matters in the end here. It was just a bottomless, so it doesn't really matter if we changed it now versus then, but if it was like Threatening Roar or something, it could have actually come up. But we're going to go for the Demok. We're then going to Braincon the red gadget, and they just admit defeat and that. But, yeah, I mean, if the set was actually something, like, I guess if it was Gravekeeper Spy, that would have been bad for us. But, like, I think pretty much everything that gadgets would play, this deck is perfectly fine dealing with here, and this play does win the game. So that's why I was fine doing it, and I think it ultimately worked out for us because we won that game there. We're going to go into game 2. So for the siding, I'm trying to remember what exactly I sided. I think I keep the deck largely the same because there's not really much that I need to add. I bring in the Dust Shoots, I believe, because Dust Shoots really good against gadgets because they likely have 4 cards in hand a lot. So I bring in the Dust Shoots. What do I take out there? I forget exactly what I take out for the Dust Shoots, but maybe the Sakus. I might take out the Sakus because like Saku's a bit worse against gadgets because they're fine making those 1-for-1 trades like that. So I think I take out those. But yeah, we go Confi here. We see that they've got a Mirror Force, a Mobius, a Lightning Vortex, a Jinjo, and a Cyber Dragon. And that's a bit scary for me because it seems like they might have sided into more of a Monarch-based strategy here. But we do have Dust Shoot to take one of their monsters from hand. So what I decided to do is I decided to take the Mirror Force there. Because we can sort of play around Lightning Vortex a little bit with this enemy controller. Like if they have a monster on field and they go Lightning Vortex on our field, we can chain Econ, tribute our monster, take control of theirs, and pop that. Dust Shoot can also take away the Cyber Dragon to prevent them from actually being able to get these monsters out on the field easily. So yeah, I feel like it's ultimately fine to send Mirror Force because we don't, well, I guess Mobius would have dealt with that, but like, I mean, they probably are not going to set 2 back row here, given we're on the Monarch deck. But they drew into a red gadget here, so that is a bit unfortunate. I was hoping they wouldn't get a gadget and we could just send back the Sidra with ease. I still think it is better to send back the Sidra because we don't want them to be able to get out the tribute monster that easily. I do feel like we've got ways to deal with the gadgets because what we do is we special summon out Sidra Dragon, go Mobius, pop the back row, and then we're feeling very good about that. So they do go for a red gadget here, grabbing a yellow, and then they're going to just attack in for 13. We are perfectly fine with that. We'll take that. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw DD Warrior Lady here, which is very good. We can just get even more aggressive here if we want to. We go for a Sidra here. And what we could do is we could chain Econ, tribute our Sidra, take control of the red gadget, then tribute that off for something. But I think it's fine just letting the Sidra go, and then just sending out DD Warrior Lady, attacking over the red gadget, and then not banishing. Now we have a monster on field, so, you know, if they don't do anything here, we can tribute off for like a Zaborg or a Mobius or something. But if they do something here, then like, it's ultimately okay, I think. They go for a yellow gadget here to search out the green, and now they go for the Vortex here, pitching a Mobius. We are going to chain that Econ, take control of the yellow just to pop that as well. We could potentially save this here, but I think it's fine doing this. We deprive them of a yellow. It's 1-for-1 removal, but maybe given that they had Jinzo still in hand, it would be better to save that, because we're only taking 1200, which is ultimately fine. If we draw into like Sidra here, that's a bit awkward for us. Or Hydrogeddon, because Hydrogeddon would have been pretty nice here. We're going to bring out that Hydrogeddon, attack in for 16. That will indeed go through. We'll pass back to them. They're going to bring out a green here, search out a red, and now they're going to just think about this and decide to attack into our Hydrogeddon here, go for a limit removal in the damage step, pop our Hydrogeddon, and it's back to us. So I guess it wouldn't necessarily worked out if we had just attacked in to the yellow and kept the Econ set there, but I think it would have been ultimately not the worst thing in the world. But they're going to summon out red, search out yellow, get him for 13 here. Now we're in a bit of a tough spot. We need a way to actually bring out our Monarch. Cyber Dragon is that, so we're going to special summon out the Sidra there, then go for a Zaborg there, pop the red, attack him for 24. If they do set a monster here, we got another Zaborg for that. If they set back row, we got a Mobius for that. So we're feeling pretty good here overall, as long as they can't clear the Zaborg here. They're going to bring out a Sidra of their own, which is a bit rough. Then they're going to go for Snipe Hunter. Snipe Hunter will probably be able to wrap the game up here. They're going to pitch a Cyber Phoenix. They do hit a 1, but they still have 2 more shots to do this, so they're going to roll again. And unfortunately, that one will hit and destroy the Zaborg, attack in for 3,600, and that will be the end of that game there. So we did lose the game 2. I think if I had played the Dust Shoot a little bit differently and the Comfy a little bit differently, maybe it could have turned out differently. But I think ultimately it was fine. I would defend the choices I made there. I think they were fine in the moment. But yeah, the gadgets, like once they were able to get that advantage engine going there, it just was able to out-advantage us. But I think it was ultimately fine what I did, given the knowledge at the time. But anyways, we're just going to start by setting a DD Warrior Lady, setting a Dust Shoot, passing back to them. I think this is a perfectly fine opening play. I could have potentially summoned the Warrior Lady instead of setting it, just to play around Knock a bit. But I feel like, I mean, maybe they decided Knock against this deck, but I feel like Monarchs are like pretty aggressive. I guess we're playing Spies and stuff, so yeah, I probably should have just summoned out the Warrior Lady and not set it. But we go for a Dust Shoot here. See, they do indeed have the Knock, which is quite unfortunate. We are just going to send the Sidra because, again, I don't want them to get special summons out, basically change the amount of summons they can do per turn. So I'm going to send that back into the deck. They've got 2 gadgets here anyway, so they can get a gadget no matter what, in case I sent one of those back. They don't really have many spells that I really care about them getting back, because Knock is something I can play around, even if they get back with Magician of Faith. So I'm fine with this overall. Just is unfortunate that they do have the Knock there. So I should have probably played around that a little bit by summoning out the Warrior Lady here. But they're going to summon out red, search out yellow, knock our Warrior Lady, attack him for 13. And that's ultimately fine because they don't really have any way to protect themselves here. So we can just go Hydrogeddon and then attack over the red and then bring out another Hydrogeddon from deck. and get in for a ton of damage here. So I feel like this is pretty good. We also have another Death Shoot here too, so we can send back their best monster on top of this. So I'm feeling pretty good about this turn of events overall. So we're just going to set that Death Shoot pass back to them. We're going to go for Death Shoot right away, and we see that they got a Lightning Vortex, which is unfortunately one of the best things that this deck can draw against this sort of board. But, you know, I think it was fine going for what we did anyways, because it did deck then ultimately and get in for a fair bit of damage. So we're going to send back the Moth because I don't want them to recur the Lightning Vortex there. And also, again, the gadgets don't really care about those getting sent back. Mobius, they can't use right now. If they do use it later, it's a bit awkward for us. But, like, we don't have any back row right now, so I'm not too concerned about that. But they're going to pitch that yellow gadget, summon out another yellow gadget, get a green gadget here, and now they're going to attack in for 1,200, dropping us down to 5,500. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Mobius here, so not the ideal draw, but it's still something. We can attack over the yellow with the Hydrogeddon. No more Hydras left in deck, so we can't bring out another one of those. But I'm feeling okay about this overall. They set one and don't summon out the green. That's kind of interesting. But maybe they're afraid of, like, Zaborg or something. I don't know. Either way, I'm just going to summon out Mobius, pop that back row. It was TT, so we do get punished for that. But, you know, it's kind of weird because, like, you'd feel like Gadget Deck would be fine just summoning out green here, taking the trade with the TT because the green's replaced itself, right? So, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Maybe I could have just read that it was TT, but it felt more like a weird bluff than anything to me there. Anyways, they're going to bring out green, search out red, and then go for Graceful on top of that. Graceful Charity is a very good card, so that's a bit unfortunate for us. They're going to attack in for 14 there, drop us down by to 41. They set one pass back to us. We draw a Premature Burial, which is very, very good for us here. We can go pre-mat and then target one of our monsters here. We're going to target the Mobius, and then we're going to tribute that Mobius for another Mobius, popping that back row, dealing with that smashing ground, so I'm glad that we dealt with that. And now we're able to attack into that green, drop them down by 1,000, and then pass back to them. And they're just going to set one pass back to us. We have a Zaborg, though, so we can just tribute out this Zaborg, pop that set, and then get in for 24. So they're down to 200 life points, which is a very, very scary spot for a Gadget deck to be in. Not the end of the world. You know, as I showed in my Gadget video, you can come back from this position depending on getting good draws and things like that. But it's going to be a major, major task for them to do that. And we're just going to, you know, do a bit of a cheeky play here, go for Thestalos, try and rip that card out of their hand. Given they're on gadgets, it might as well be a gadget. So if it is a gadget, we probably win the game here. And it will indeed be a gadget, so we do indeed win the game. And I think that's ultimately fine because they've gone through their Moth already, so they don't have another one of those. So I think it's fine just going for the Thestalos now and ripping that card out of the hand. If their set monster was a flip monster, you know, we can just attack over Sidra this turn. And then next turn, they're in a bit of a tough spot because if they want to get that flip effect, they have to flip it up. And we've got Great Cure Spy to summon out to get in for 12. But that does indeed deal enough burn damage to win. And so we will indeed win this game against Gadgets. So a bit of a grind fest, but that's how games against Gadgets go. I mean, our deck is also a bit of a grindier deck. So, you know, I do like this deck overall in the Gadget matchup because it does play things like Hydrogeddon, which are very good there. And also just the Monarchs themselves are much more powerful than the Gadgets. So if you can establish some Monarchs and just deal with your opponent's removal, then it can be pretty good. But yeah, I mean, Gadgets is a deck that will be around in the format for sure, especially in the next tournament, because I assume the people will be sort of experimenting with it there. So it is good to know this matchup and sort of like figure out how to navigate it, because it can be a bit tricky. But this wasn't the only game I got with the deck. I got one more match, so let's dive into that one now. Here we got another game against Scout. We're diving into the games here. This was actually a different deck because we decided to do a rematch, but they wanted to play something a bit different. So, yeah, we'll see how this deck goes. But we draw the Demock early, which is kind of interesting. But we're just going to set a Heavy Storm here as a pro-heavy bluff. And it looks like our opponent isn't doing anything either. So it looks like we're just going to keep passing back and forth to ourselves. And yeah, it's because this is the Monarch mirror match. So you'll get a bit of a glimpse of that. But now they've got two back row, I'm fine just going Heavy Storm here. Getting rid of those. And then at the end of the turn, pitching a Demock, getting that engraved for a Call the Haunted for later. Yeah, I could have committed the call to field now, but it's better just having this engraved, I think, because we've got plenty of Monarchs here that we're fine just bringing out that way. Our opponent's going to think about this. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Comfy, which is pretty good. We're just going to go for a Sidra, and then we're going to tribute that for a Zaborg, popping the Graveyard Spy here, attacking him for 24, and then confiscationing away whatever else might be in hand. So we get a peek at their hand, and it is a big one. And this is actually a very interesting hand because it is a bit scary to face off against. They've got a Sidra, so they can bring that out and then tribute out as a Zaborg or a Thestalos if they want to. They've got a Braincon, so if we take the Sidra, they can Braincon, take control of Zaborg, tribute out Thestalos, rip a card out of our hand, which is a bit awkward. They've got Pre-Mat Call, so if we send a monster here anyways, they can just bring it back if they want to. So I think what I'm ultimately going to do here, and this is kind of weird, but I think I actually want to take the Call of the Haunted. And the reason for this is, like, every card in their hand is really good. I could take a Monarch or something just to prevent it from getting that effect off. But either way, they're getting a powerful effect no matter what I take here. So what I ultimately decided to do is Call is the only card here that doesn't really cost resources or life points to play. So I'm just leaving them with things that do cost resources or life points to play. I mean, Sidra also doesn't do that, but Sidra didn't deal with the Zaborg. So Sidra is just a stepping stone to something else. Call actually does represent like potential ways to out Zaborg or my other Monarchs if they get a Monarch in rotation, which they are able to do this turn. So I do think it's just better to take the Call. So a bit of an interesting decision. I could definitely see people taking different things instead there. But I do decide to do that. I think it's ultimately fine. And they're going to go for BrainCon there, taking control of the Zaborg there. And they're going to bring out a Thestalos, ripping a card out of our hand, ripping an Exiled Force. Now, I could have potentially, after the BrainCon resolved and they got Zaborg, I could have potentially activated Call of the Haunted to bring back the Demok, just in case they had a Mobius. That was their draw, and they popped our Call there. Because if they activate Call and I chain Call to the Mobius, then I don't actually get the effect on the Demok, so it's a bit awkward there. But I think it's ultimately fine doing it this way, because, you know, they'd have to top deck the Mobius, and they do have Zaborg in hand, so they could just pop our Demok anyways. And I don't value the spell we get back enough at this point to actually go for that. So they're going to try attacking in for 24. We do go for the Call now, so that way we don't take that damage. Bring back that Dark Magician of Chaos, get the Confiscation, so now we can rip another card of their hand on the follow-up. And they're just going to set one pass back to us. That could be live. And if it is live, a great way to test that out is just going for BrainCon here, taking control of the Thestalos and attacking in for 5,200. And that will be the end of the game. Yeah, it was just a set pre-mat. The new draw, it looks like, was another Thestalos. So, but yeah, we were able to just win the game very quickly here. So kind of interesting. That's how Monarch games sometimes go, where it's like a stalemate for a long time. And then one player is just able to explode and win the game on the spot. So we were able to pull that one out, and let's dive into the next game to see how we continue to do. Now, in the siding, I take out the Hydrogeddons, and I bring in things like Dust-Shoot, because I think the Dust-Shoots are very good. I also believe I take out some of the... What do I take out here? I forget exactly what else I take out, but I take out a couple more cards as well, to add in things like Threatening Roar, I believe, which is good against Mobius. So I think I might take out some of the Sakus for that, maybe. But I don't know. Either way, I should have taken out Heavy Storm. I didn't think of that. But in siding for the next game, you'll definitely see that. I go for an Exiled here because, you know, I figure if it's like Treeborn, then, you know, they've got a back row and they'll have to use it at some point. So, like, you know, I'm okay with them getting Treeborn Grave now as long as their back row is not something. And unfortunately here, you know, it might be something if it's like MST or something. I could have just kept these cards in hand to not worry about that. But if it is MST, you know, we just got to hope they don't hit the Dust-Shoot, and then we can Dust-Shoot out a card from their hand. If it's heavy, I'm fine with that because they just have to heavy for one. So I go for the Dust-Shoot here, get a peek of their hand. See, they've got a Reaper, a Guard, a Cyber Dragon, and a Jinzo. That's a bit of an awkward hand, but I do want to get rid of the Reaper because they've got heavy, and, you know, they go heavy, attacking with Reaper, we lose a card from hand. We do have ways to deal with the Reaper, like BrainCon's a good one to do that. We also have Sangan here, which is nice, but, like, I like our hand, so I don't want to lose any of it, so I'm fine just sending back that Reaper there and leaving them with a heavy, a Guard, a Jinzo, and a Sidra. So they're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Book of Moon, which is pretty good. We're going to go for the Breaker here, and the intention here is to pop the back row attack into the Guard, which bounces the Breaker, and then, you know, we get that for the next turn, but they do have a TT here to pop the board, so they are able to pop the board, you know, and their own Guard as well. And then they're able to potentially set up for something next turn. So they're going to bring back that Treeborn there. They're going to tribute that off for a Jinzo, attack in for 24. I mean, we're fine with that. We got BrainCon. If we draw a Monarch, we can, you know, summon that out. But Zaborg is not necessarily a Monarch we can use to summon that out, because with Zaborg, you know, if we tribute summon it over the Jinzo, then it pops itself. So bit awkward there. They're going to bring back that Treeborn there, and they're going to tribute that for a Thestalos. Thestalos is a bit unfortunate for us, and they take the book, which is actually pretty good here overall. They're able to attack into the Sangan. We're going to think about what to search. I decided to search out a Spy instead of a Frog. They figure at this point in the game, what I want to do, I want to set up for tribute fodder for Zaborg and things like that. But also, I feel like Frog is not as defensive at this point in the game, and we are going to be down quite a bit of life points here. So I feel like having the Spy is pretty good here. I'm going to then BrainCon, take control of the Jinzo, just crash the Jinzo with the Thessalos here. I could have also tribute summoned out the Zaborg, but if they got like Brain Con or something, then they just Brain Con the Zaborg and win the game on that. So I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to do the more defensive play here by setting the Spy, and then with the Spy, I'll be able to hopefully summon out Zaborg next turn. So they go for heavy here, popping our heavy, bring out a Sidra, and then bring out a Snipe Hunter. Oh no, that card's the bane of our existence. But yeah, if they miss this, then we're sitting fine. But if they don't, then we're in a bad spot. And as a note, like this would have been the case no matter what we had searched out with Sangan, no matter if we had summoned out Zaborg and popped their stuff or what have you. But I do think that like ultimately this was the better choice overall. Because again, you know, if they've got like Zaborg, if they've got Snipe Hunter, if they've got a way to out what we've got anyways, then we're losing the game. But in cases where they don't have that, I do think that this sets us up in a pretty good spot. Decked ins for us and did a lot for us. So yeah, that will be the end of game 2. We do indeed lose that one. But I do think that like if we had started out the heavy for something a bit more proactive on our part, or just something just a bit better in the Monarch match, we would have been in a much better spot here overall. So I do indeed do that. I think I bring in the full T-Roars. I bring in Vanity's Fiend as well. Yeah, Vanity's Fiend was another card I sided in because it's very good against things like Spy. It's good against Frog. It's good against Sidra. So it does shut off a lot of the Monarch deck as well. So I'm very happy with it. I go for a Comfy here, get a peek at their hand, see that they've got a Spy, a Brain Con, a Thessalos, a Mobius, and a Threatening Roar. That's a bit tricky for us here. I do go for the Mobius because I want the Sakuretsu armor to stay online. You know, if I lose cards from hand, that's unfortunate, kind of rough. But they can't necessarily bring in the Thessalos next turn. So I feel fine just, you know, going for that. And T-Roar is also a bit awkward for us because that will buy them a turn. But I feel like this is ultimately pretty good. And we can sort of like play around a little bit. Like we don't need to OTK to potentially set up a game shot in the future. But we're going to tribute that Spirit Reaper for the Zaborg there, popping the Gravekeeper Spy, then attacking in for 2,400. Now what I could have done here instead is I could have gotten Exiled Force, pop the Spy, flip up the Reaper, attack in for 300, ripping a card out of their hand. And then they can't like Brain Con, then tribute over for a Monarch because the Reaper will pop itself. So I think in hindsight, that might have been the better play. But at the same time, like if I do that play, then I don't have any tribute fodder for our Fiend and our Monarch. So it's sort of like, it's got pros and cons, but I like this better because Exiled Force is something we don't need to tribute summon out. And if they do use like Brain Con, we do have this ring now, so we can pop our own Zaborg if we want to. But I feel like I can save the ring for later. But so I just let them go for these Brain Con there into the Thessalos. This gets the Thessalos out of their hand. They do indeed take the Exiled, which is a bit unfortunate for us. But ultimately, we get to clear the Thessalos with the Sakuretsu armor there. And now we can potentially save ring for something else later. But again, you know, because I had the Saku, maybe I should have gone for ring on my own Zaborg. Because Saku also deals with the Thessalos. I don't know. Maybe that wasn't correct on my part, but I summon out the breaker here. I attack in for 19. They do let that go through. And now in main 2, I just will pop that back row because I'm very scared of a Threatening Roar, right? I want to be able to get aggressive and just win the game on the spot with this ring here as well. So, I feel like it's better to, you know, pop the back row in case it is Roar, so that way they can't use it in future turns, rather than just waiting for a potential more live back row. And it was indeed the Threatening Roar, so I pop that, and now I pass back to our opponent. They will set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Zaborg, which is really good. I mean, Vanity's Fiend would have also been really good, because I feel like that set is probably Spy, and Vanity's Fiend just hits over the Spy, prevents it from summoning out another, and that's fine. But Zaborg just wins the game on the spot. So we summon out Zaborg, pop that Spy, get him for 24, and now we've got this ring to finish off the game. So, yeah, very, very good games for this deck. They had a Brain Con and a Sangan as follow-up later, but, you know, again, like, it's a bit tricky against this deck. We're in a bit of a better position here overall, and we got the ring to protect ourselves as well. So, yeah, very, very good stuff for this deck. I like this deck a lot. Sure, you can't really learn much about it in the mirror, but the mirror is important to play some games in and sort of see how it plays, because you likely will be playing against other Monarch decks in a tournament if you bring this deck to it. So it is good to know that matchup. I didn't get a Machine OTK matchup with this deck, but I think it's ultimately fine. I feel like this deck does decently against that deck because, like, you know, basically that deck is sort of feast or famine a lot of the time, where if it pulls off the combo, it's great. If it doesn't, then it's not really that good. And this deck does have targeted hate for it, like Vanity's Fiend and things like that. They can really stymie that deck quite a bit. But, you know, that deck is still definitely in development. People are brewing up things for it. So it could definitely be a lot better in the future and give this deck some trouble. And I think it just falls down to, like, if the more aggressive decks in the format are able to get aggressive enough to kill you before you can actually set up your Monarch stuff, then you're in a bad spot. But if you're able to get the Monarch stuff going and really, like, putting a ton of pressure on your opponent, it can be very, very good for you. But what do you think about this deck? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think that, you know, Monarch is a bit better than I'm giving it credit for? Do you think it's a bit worse than I'm giving it credit for? What would you play in the deck? Do you want to play like Apprentice Magician or Jinzo or other things like that? What would you cut from the deck? Do you not like the Hydra Geddons? Do you not like the Sakus? Let me know down in the comments below. And I hope you enjoy as always. A big shout out to my patrons, Rincewind, Pork Tycoon, Bren Donker, GMYFS, Dump Truck, and Tyler Compton. It means a lot that you all support me this way, encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. I hope that you enjoyed as always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.